r/AskReddit. Girls of Reddit, what's the female equivalent of trying to hide a boner? Getting your period when you're not expecting or springing a leak. No one wants that stain on the back of their pants for everyone to see. Having to wear an audible feminine hygiene product. Some honestly sound like you're wearing a plastic bag in your underwear, but if you get caught out, sometimes you're reduced to wearing one. You spend the rest of the day trying to move as carefully as possible so not to make too much noise. One that I found out recently. When you're breastfeeding, you go out for whatever reason, and then you leak through your bra and through your shirt and you just have giant wet patches on your chest. It's horrifying. Trying to hide erect nipples. It's not necessarily cold outside or in a situation where I'm turned on. They just do it. Also, sometimes you just get really wet down there. Fabrics that show up sweat patches also show up other wet patches. They are also in the places you can't always see. Nipples and dicks have their own minds. The only way they can be controlled is getting turned on purpose, and that only controls stuff one way around. Lovely username BTW. Putting a jacket around your waist at school because you're self-conscious that there is blood on your pants during the time of the month. I'm a guy, but I have a funny story about this. I work with a girl and she came into the break room one morning wearing some velvet pants in a wine sort of color. I said, hey look, you wore your minstrel pants today. To me they looked like something from a minstrel show that you would see at a Renaissance fair. I could tell by the panicked look on her face that she didn't get the connection. Then she looked down and quickly left, and that was when I realized that she must have heard menstrual pants. And I start saying yeah no, minstrel, like in a traveling lute player. So we had a good laugh about it later, but I've never seen her wear those pants again. Hiding a period stain or hiding the pain on her face from period cramp when are in public. While I was still in the office a few months ago and was in the middle of a sentence to a couple of male co-workers when I had a bout of the most horrendous cramp imaginable. The first one hit out of nowhere with a stabbing pain that caused me to stop in the middle of a word with a huge involuntary intake of breath, audible urg, double over and clutch the desk for support. All completely involuntary. I was embarrassed, but their immediate reaction was concern and understanding, and making sure I was okay. OMG, are you okay? Have you got terrible cramp? In addition to reassuring comments about their wife and girlfriend suffering the same thing so as to let me know they were used to it and okay talking about it. Discreetly asking another colleague for painkillers as I had a sit down to ride out the waves of pain and making me a cup of tea. I love working with good, kind, grown-up blokes. The awkward moment when you're talking to someone and feel your period start or just random sudden flow during. Bonus, one time while I was talking to my boss, the front clip on my cheap bra actually just randomly snapped. One time in 8th grade, I'm sitting in English class. There was a sudden whoosh by my ear through my hair, which made me jump. Thought it was a fly or something. Several class periods later, the kid behind me taps me on the shoulder to say, your tag is sticking out of your shirt. I feel back where my tag is. It's inside my shirt, whatever. I get home and turn into the bathroom in front of the mirror where the strap of my convertible bra is clearly visible, dangling out the top of my shirt and down my back. It came unhooked, and I walked around all day like that. ETA. Apparently there are a lot of men that don't know what a convertible bra is. It's a medieval torture device still in use today. A strapless bra, like just the cups and band that goes round the back, with little hooks in the front and back, so you can attach bra straps, or move them around in different configurations. Halter, one strap, racer back, etc. Straps are supposed to come detached, but not as projectiles of pubescent embarrassment. Definitely agree with the period stain, but I'm here for some advice. I work with kids with severe special needs, and so I'm very familiar with unwanted boners. We obviously recognize that it's a natural occurrence, but also not something we want our students to be laughed at for, or occasionally they will try to start other actions to fix it. Our solution is to have the kids wash their hands with cold water up to the elbow. It makes it disappear right away 90% of the time. Physical exercise. It pumps blood to the muscles being used, away from the penis. Think flexing the arm for 30 seconds, or squatting, or push-ups or sit-ups. Takes a few seconds. Edit. Upper body muscles may work best, as it pumps blood away from your nether regions, your loins, your genitals. Edit 2. Maybe not push-ups cause your meat will take a beating. Also someone mentioned glute/thigh muscles can be really effective, perhaps due to how close they are to the problem area, thereby affecting it faster. Also the larger the muscle, the more blood it pulls away from your erection. How about the condensation on a chair after standing up? That strip of moisture that has accumulated due to the moist environment between your legs. I know it's from that, and is normal, but it always trips me up. I just don't like it, lol. Also, do guys do this? Edit. Wow. Thank you fellow redditors for the awards. I was unaware so many people had the same issue, and that so many people struggled with this alongside me. Y'all are the bee's knees. Thank you again. Hiding normal discharge wet spots. I don't know if it's just me, but mid-cycle I cannot keep my underwear dry to save my life. Add yoga pants to the mix and voila, looks like you pissed yourself a little. When I'm not on cycle, discharge comes like crazy. One time I wore a long dress to school and I was soaking wet from discharge, not turned on, and could feel it on my legs. No. Just no. Sometimes my nipples decide they'd like to let the world know they exist, and I just can't hide them. They'll be noticeable through padded bras and pullovers. No, I have small nipples, and no effing clue why they do this. It's not related to my cycle, nor to temperature. They just have bold days. Same with boners. Sometimes we are not even turned on, but our dicks are like, hey oh what's up people, how's y'all doing? And we just have to accept it, and walk oddly, until we manage to get everything in its place. Happens with our nipples too, but because male nipples are not really sexualized, unlike female nipples, that situation is not as uncomfortable. Wearing a bra that's thinner than you thought, and having your nipples stick out. I've held a book or a file up to my chest like an anime schoolgirl clutching a love note. I didn't wear a bra once, but I wore a black shirt, so I figured they were adequately covered. Apparently sunlight made it completely see-through, and I didn't realize until someone pointed it out to me. I had been out walking all day that day. I was just telling my husband this my commute takes me through a popular cyclist route. I told him a lot of people have taken up cycling lately, and not very many of them have figured out cycling shorts have similar opaque/see-through issues as cheap legging. Trying to sneak a pad or tampon into the restroom without people noticing, especially if it is in your locker or bag. When I was in school, I would lean down to the floor from my desk to grab a tampon. While I was down there I'd just slip it under the cuff of my skinny jeans, or sometimes into the side of my shoes. I was always so self-conscious about people seeing the outline of a tampon in my pockets, and I figured that nobody would stare at my feet long enough to see the outline of a tampon by my ankles. When I was in high school I would reach into my backpack to grab a pad, stuffing it up my sleeve in the process. IDK how I did it. It makes no sense to me now. The lengths I went to hide it were insane. I still hide it to a point, but much less aggressively, LMAO. I answered a question exactly like this on this sub before, but the answer remains the same. Period blood smell, which is like sweet, rotten meat or fish, before anyone asks. Period blood stains, which are inevitable for me, because of my heavy flow. Edit, have gotten thousands of go see a doctor comments. I have. Drive said it was fine, unless you are a gynecologist, have seen a gynecologist for the same issue, or know a gynecologist. Do not worry. If you are /no/have seen a gynecologist, please let me know if you think there is a problem. Otherwise, no need to comment. I always found mine smelled metallic. Well, as a very fair-skinned person, I blush very easily, and there's nothing like a super hot guy to make it happen uncontrollably. I also get bullet hard nips for hormonal reasons, rather than just the cold, and it can be very hard to hide at times. For the super not sexy TMI answer to this post, let's talk crotch leakage. So long story short, I and many other women go through phases of urinary incontinence. It can happen after giving birth. It can be connected to IBS/food sensitivities, old age, loss of muscle tone, weight gain, or anxiety. Mine is for the latter two. So there are phases I go through where, no matter how often I shower and put on fresh clothes, I will have horrible swamp crotch within hours. Cotton underwear, breathable clothes, I've tried it all. It makes little difference. The only semi-solution is to constantly wear a pad to absorb the mix of sweat and uncontrollable urine leaks. It's never a gush of pee like when you actually pee, but a few small dribbles that amount to enough wet to soak your underclothes and eventually seep to outer layers. So apart from the smell, which often wafts up to my nose, I have to be concerned about a visible wet spot on my crotch/whatever I sit on. Whenever I get up from a plastic chair, I scoot my butt across it sideways to wipe away any incriminating leaks that would otherwise show up on the chair. Vaginas are great fun. Not trying to hide a boner, but a woman annoyance. Farting when you're wearing a pad, but not a tampon. Sitting down. Early on in your cycle, your fart ends up collecting in your vagina, and when you stand up, the fart ends up coming out along with globs of blood clots. So you end up loudly queefing out blood clots when you stand up, but are also struggling to stand and walk the right way so that the rest of the blood that just came out doesn't navigate towards your butt or anywhere off the pad. I know everyone is talking about periods, but I'll want to talk about all the times I'll tried to hide that I was very horny. I'm a very distracted person, and I'll tend to daydream more than it is healthy, so when my attention span of a 3-year-old child without tires of something after 5 seconds, it goes to dreamland. I tend to create mini stories in my head, and when I was 13 a new type of story entered my mind library, porn. Cue fantastic magic music. No kidding. I used to be daydreaming of porn literally all the time during school. Gay sex, lesbian sex, femdom, threesomes, foursomes and everything else I could come around that day. Pros of that, I learned I'll have a thing for our relationships and gentle femdom, and also learned to draw to make my own porn. Cons, no kidding. LD be so wet at the end of the day, there would be a spot where L was sitting. Ruined 4 pants because of this, and a lot of poor unders and almost failed school that year. My solution was to just wear a pad and pretend nothing was happening. Yay. Well, I'll throw my hat into the ring. Sometimes where the urge hits, I cannot think of anything else. My mind is in the gutter and it's stuck there. I can't really hold conversations and I pretty much am that anime girl stereotype. Legs clamped together, hand over my mouth, biting my lip. I imagine the feeling of getting hard is similar to the pulsing sensation a vagina gets / the feeling of getting wet. At least you can hide a boner, and there's no evidence after, right? Sometimes you soak through a seat and it's like, welp, guess I'll die. And yeah, I agree with all the period ones too. Gonna get buried but oh well. I have a few. 1. The obvious hiding any kind of leakage, whether it be blood or discharge. Both can visibly stain. The worst is when you're in school or at a meeting where you're sitting down for a long period of time and you feel moisture in your pants, but getting up draws attention. You don't want people to see stains on your clothing or where you were sitting. I have personally had to master sitting with my legs crossed tightly and balancing sitting on one leg in those situations, as I have personally had embarrassing situations thanks to a very heavy and unpredictable flow. Contrary to what an alarming amount of men I've spoken with believe, we absolutely can't hold it like peeing. 2. Any itches in embarrassing places. Nipples get itchy. Who has get itchy? Butts get itchy. If we can't immediately excuse ourselves, we will come up with very inventive ways to itch it depending on where it is. If it's an upstairs itch, I will pretend to itch my opposite shoulder with my arm scratching or rubbing my nipple for relief. Doesn't always work. Thanks bra padding. If it's downstairs, sometimes shifting my weight awkwardly or crossing/uncrossing my legs can do the trick. 3. Haven't seen this ITT yet, but if I'm on my period and swimming, I'm always terrified my tampon spring might slip out of my swimsuit bottoms. Hasn't happened yet, knock on wood. Also, if you've been swimming, it's really hard to determine if you're bleeding through, if you suspect you might have, because your bathing suit is already wet. 4. When we are having sex, air does get trapped in there from the thrusting, and it's sometimes inevitable that some of that air audibly comes out, so that's annoying. 5. A lot of women have talked about nipples showing through clothes. This next point is specific to me, and not a lot of women will share my opinion, but I actually don't mind my nipples showing under my clothing. I'm not talking about shirts being see-through, but in terms of seeing the shape of the nipple. This is just a personal preference and depends on my mood that day. However, when I do that, I would rather my nipples be erect actually. On my no bra days, I hate when they are not. It's weird and definitely an unpopular opinion. I've seen a lot of women embrace not wearing a bra recently, and it's just my personal preference that when I do that my nipples are erect, so I will usually do this in colder months. I don't have hot nipples or anything, but I do feel like it makes my breasts look fuller and it's a part of my body I feel confident about and love. Love the natural look, and I wish women weren't made to feel self-conscious about their body's anatomy. That's a different conversation though. 6. Camel toe, especially when wearing shorts, because it's easier for those to ride up. 7. I don't wear pads, but when I did during my early menstruation years, I was always so worried you could see the pad outline through clothing. And they're loud when you walk. That's all I got from the top of my head. This is definitely not universal, but once I was sitting in a lecture and wearing a low-cut top. It was cold, and so I stuck my hand not writing notes into my armpit. Not weird. It wasn't until I made prolonged eye contact with the professor, a young 20-something man, that I realized I had went through the neck of my shirt and it kinda looked like I was fondling myself. Also, once at the public pool my boob popped out of my top and I didn't notice it for like a full minute. The pool one happened to me too. I was on holidays, and it was cold, so there was just a mother and her 2 kids, but the mother was such a Karen. She was staring me down, and I had no idea why, and then I looked down and oh shit, a boob has popped out. Let's just say I check about 50 times a minute, to avoid that happening ever again. The staring off into space thinking about sex look I've seen booked before. I'm guilty of it too, but my friend got clocked doing it out in public once, and I was surprised. When this is happening, your clit might throb, and personally, I inadvertently start squeezing my pelvic floor muscles. Sometimes if you're horny enough that can almost feel painful. The smell of Chinese lilac trees have this effect on me, weirdly. If I really have a crush on a dude I will stare at the back of his head when he's not looking, or in the case of my site supervisor, stare at his sexy ass/arm hair. I hope my other co-workers aren't noticing cause that would be embarrassing, but I can hardly help it.